Hello and welcome to the Manatee Glens Report. I'm Sandra Guffey, the Public Relations Director at Manatee Glens. That's the specialty hospital and outpatient practice for mental health and addictions in our area. Today we're at the beautiful campus of Southeastern Guide Dogs in Palmetto. We're in the Veterans Courtyard, which is absolutely gorgeous. And we're going to be talking about veterans and post-traumatic stress disorder and some of the help available for veterans across the board. We're very honored to be joined by Michael Jernigan. He is a retired corporal with the U.S. Marine Corps, along with his guide dog, Brittany. We'll be talking about her and a little bit about Michael's story here in a minute. And Melissa Larkin-Skinner, who is Vice President of Inpatient Services at Manatee Glens. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Let's start a little bit about veterans and why we're here today. We're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, which is certainly an issue as we've seen with veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. Michael, you've certainly had an incredible story. Give us a little bit of background. What happened to you?
I found a bomb. I was in Iraq in the spring and summer of 2004. On August 22nd, 2004, I was in the machine gun turret of a Humvee, and we hit a significantly large improvised explosive device, and it was 2 artillery shells that were laid in the roadside. From that blast, I had about 45% of my cranium crushed in, so my entire hand where my forehead is, that's all an acrylic plate. I was the first U.S. service member to lose both eyes in the global war on terror. I had other damage to my hands and knee, and I was thrown 20 meters out of the vehicle. Coming home, through the process, I went through 30 major surgeries in the first 12 months. I flatlined during 3 of those, and I spent 16 months in hospitals and rehab facilities before I could get out of the Marine Corps. And it was really when I got out of the Corps that I started truly noticing the differences, which I later learned was post-traumatic stress.
Melissa, as a clinician, how do we define what PTS or PTSD is?
Post-traumatic stress occurs in people who've experienced a very traumatic event. It can be either that they were a part of the event, the victim of the event, or they witnessed an event. And for veterans in particular, those that are in combat zones are the ones that we see really experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. It usually pops up within 3 months of the event, and sometimes it can actually pop up much later, like up to a year later, and it can last for a very long time.
And it's not like we can just say, well, just get over it, you'll get better, shake it off, walk it off. I mean, which is contrary to military people. You're tough guys.
Yeah, this isn't a sprained ankle at a Little League game.
Yeah.
This is a very real thing. A lot of people in the civilian world don't understand the constant stress that we're exposed to when we're in a combat zone. I mean, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, week after week after week after week. You're vulnerable, and when you wind up becoming a very hyper-vigilant person, and when you come back to the States and rotate back, you start to realize that those are traits that aren't needed in the civilian world, yet you can't shake them. They become ingrained.
Yes. Melissa and I know someone, Bobby, who talks about an on switch, that the on switch is on. Melissa, tell us a little bit about, on switch on doesn't really go off that easily, does it?
So part of the military training is it's really about having a kill switch. I mean, that's what our troops are trained to do, is protect and serve at all costs. So they're trained to constantly have that switch on when they're in the military, and it doesn't just automatically shut off. It is, like Michael said, very ingrained. And so one of the things that veterans are experiencing when they do come back to civilian life, or trying to transition back into civilian life is that they don't want to sleep, without their weapon being at least within arm's reach, because they're so accustomed to having that there and needing to be able to immediately protect themselves and the person on the left and the person on the right.
I think we ought to focus on the fact that the military is trained to do more than just kill.
No, I do know that. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
We do a lot of good in the world other than just killing.
Absolutely. And I think that probably because of the training that you have, your training is so good that it is so ingrained
Yeah.
that when you come back, you've got, what are some of those challenges?
The purpose of our training literally is when we're faced with a contact situation with an enemy force that our minds aren't even working, we just go through muscle memory and we move forward. That's why we train so much. You practice like you're going to play, and it allows you to do the awesome feats that we do. When we come home, you no longer have to be worried that you're under constant threat, and that's one of the biggest difficulties coming home. I think also one of the things that our veterans face when they come home is seeing an American public that is detached so far away from where we are and what we're doing. I mean, when was the last time you heard anything about Iraq or Afghanistan on your local news? And when we come home, we just have this complete disconnect with the civilian community that we protect.
Most people couldn't find it on a map, either country. And as you said, we haven't been keeping in touch. It wasn't like World War II.
No.
It's a different scenario. Now, Melissa, when people are going through PTSD, some people need outpatient counseling, some might need an inpatient. What are some of the services available? What can they do to get help?
There are actually a lot of services available. The Veterans Administration has a lot of services. They have a website that veterans and their families can access the information that they need. There are other organizations as well, like the Vet Center. There are community behavioral health organizations like Manatee Glens that can help veterans. Outpatient services are a good start, certainly. Counseling, and in particular what we call cognitive behavioral therapy, it really helps individuals kind of remaster their thinking processes. A lot of PTSD gets wrapped up in the everyday thoughts that individuals have, and they develop depression, anxiety, and trying to deal with those things. They also can become involved with alcohol and drug abuse, unfortunately, because it's a lot easier to walk in a store and buy alcohol than go through the process of making an appointment with a psychiatrist and going to see a psychiatrist. And one of my friends who's a veteran talks about how it's hard for them to even admit that they're experiencing any of these things because they're trained to be tough. And
It's our culture.
to move on.
It's our culture.
Yes.
I mean, in our culture, we're trained to be on the front lines. That's what we're trained for, and we're warriors. At the essential core, we are warriors, and there's no room for weakness in a warrior culture. Unfortunately, and luckily, this is changing, and I think with the newer generations, it's changing. We're starting to realize that it is not a weakness. Post-traumatic stress is not a weakness. In a lot of ways, it can be beneficial. It creates drive in individuals, things like that. If the veteran is properly educated and also is seeking some type of coping treatment for it, it's not always a bad thing. I think we get wrapped up in the fact that a lot of veterans it does affect their lives. I mean, you look at somebody like me, I've got post-traumatic stress, yet I'm a highly functional individual. My post-traumatic stress, because of the education levels that I've received on the condition, because of the extensive counseling I've had to deal with, to learn how to cope and learn how to change my thought process and things like that, I still use it as a drive mechanism You know, I came home, I barely graduated high school. I had 4.5 freshman years at a junior college before I joined the Marine Corps. When I got out of the Marine Corps, 3 years and 1 day after I was wounded, I started back to college and wound up at Georgetown University, wound up transferring to the University of South Florida, and I've got a college degree now. You know, it's something, I took a 1.16 GPA and brought it up to over 3.0. It's just something that is in our culture. We're ingrained with that warrior mentality and that always do the best. And when you come home, like we're talking about, facing things when you come home, that drive to always do the best seems to be also disassociated from regular civilian life.
You know, and I hear that. I also think you're ingrained with the sense of team and esprit de corps, and all for your brothers.
We love that term.
Yes. So what does that mean when you come back? What can other people? I want to ask you both this. I'll start with you, Michael. What can other people close to you, do to help you, and what was not so helpful? We've already said the idea of saying, "Oh, just slough it off," is not a good idea.
I think what we should look at is there's two different ways veterans come back from the war. There's the way I came back through the hospital system, and then there's the way that guys come back. In World War II, you know, post-traumatic stress is not a new thing. You know, since the first caveman got hit with a rock by another caveman,
Sure.
that we've been experiencing post-traumatic stress in our life. It's just since 1981 that we put a label on it and we're starting to treat for it. In World War II, our veterans came back on ships. It took them a couple of weeks to come back. They had time to decompress, things like that. We started noticing in Vietnam and in subsequent conflicts. I mean, you're on the street fighting one day, and 2 days later, within 48 hours, you're back on the block. You know, and you talk about that on switch, that
Right.
You can't turn that switch off when you clear customs in Bangor, Maine. You know, you can't just turn it off. And for somebody like me coming back through the hospital system, I got to be honest with you, I had a lot more stuff to deal with than post-traumatic stress. I mean, I was dealing with staying alive. So it makes a difference. For me, my family was there for me. I'm lucky. I'm a third-generation Marine. Most of the men in my family have served. The women have been around service their entire lives. I had a great support network with my family, which helped quite a bit. I think that with the civilian world, I was fairly insulated going through the hospital process because I was surrounded by military and doctors and counselors and things like that. When guys come home, in other ways, they just come home when their deployment ends, there's not the camaraderie when they go back home. You know, when they're on base, they're surrounded by their Marines, their fellow warriors that have these shared experiences, these shared symptoms, these shared reactions. It's more accepted, it's easier to deal with. When they come home to their house and they're dealing with their family is when it really becomes an issue. When they're dealing with the actual civilian culture is when it becomes an issue. And I think some of the things that are needed and are happening is awareness is a big one. Making our civilian culture aware of post-traumatic stress. A lot of people don't realize we focus a lot because of combat veterans. But post-traumatic stress, I think the leading cause is sexual assault, is it not?
Yes.
You know, sexual assault, car accidents, these type of things.
Yeah.
So the awareness of what post-traumatic stress is and the awareness of how to interact with somebody that might be displaying symptoms of post-traumatic stress, I think, is one of the key things that we need to get across in America.
Absolutely. Well, that's certainly a good lead-in for you, Melissa, who's spent a lot of time working with
We did
people.
not rehearse that at all.
And I am really impressed with this. You've got this thing going on here. Melissa, you and I were talking before about families. You know, they come back to a family where the family already has a new routine going on now, and here comes a veteran, and they have to adjust. What were some of those things that you were telling for families as they welcome back their veteran?
And that's really true for all military personnel
Yeah.
that have been deployed. When they come back into the family unit, things have changed.
Predominant in the Navy, when these guys go out on ship for 6 months at a time and then they come home. Yeah.
And so the way they fit into their family when they left is not necessarily automatic when they come home. And so the family members and the military person or veteran have to get accustomed to each other again. But I think the biggest key for individuals who want to try to help veterans and be supportive is patience. You can't force somebody to talk about something they don't want to talk about. You know, we all have things we don't want to talk about, whether we're not proud of it or it's so stressful for us we can't even get the words out of our mouth. We don't want to think about it and tell the story because we relive it every time we tell it. I think that's definitely true with veterans. And then there's also the sense that they're not going to understand. They're going to judge me. They're going to think I'm a terrible person.
A lot of that.
You know, we have our own guilt to deal with, and certainly we don't want to take on the guilt of telling another person these things. And so I think that with time, however, a lot of folks who have post-traumatic stress or have had any kind of traumatic experience, whether their response rises to the level of post-traumatic stress disorder or not, with time, they open up. With time, they relive it just a little bit less when they think about it or talk about it. And people like Michael and certainly my friend Bobby, who go around sharing their story, as well as Kenny Thomas, who spoke at the Luncheon of Valor.
I love that guy.
Yeah.
Them sharing their stories is actually what's educating the rest of us.
Yes. We need to listen.
It helps them as well as other veterans to see that there are all these people listening and interested that aren't having a terrible reaction to their story.
One of the ways I like to talk about it is I talk about it as a puzzle, right? Imagine trying to put together a puzzle without taking the pieces out of the box, right? And those are your stories, those are your concerns, those are the things you're experiencing on the inside. When you start taking those pieces out and laying them on the table and talking about it with trained professionals, talking about it with your comrades, things like that, all of a sudden that puzzle starts to take shape, right? And dealing with it out of the box when it's out in the open is a lot easier than keeping it in the box. You can't build the puzzle if you keep the pieces in the box. Reconstructing your life is similar to putting that puzzle together. You're trying to reconstruct a life that you had before the experience. You're trying to do it with the education of the experience you've had. And that getting it out, that talking about it, that sharing, every time you pull another piece out, that puzzle is just one piece closer to being completed.
Melissa, you talked about anniversaries, and I know as Michael mentioned the exact date of the idea.
0152 Zulu hours.
Yes.
I know the time.
That can be significant, and that we should be at least aware that for someone suffering any kind of trauma, whether it's veteran or not.
Any kind of trauma, there are different things that trigger it, whether it's a smell, something that they see, being back in a similar situation. Again, a story that I've heard is that one of the individuals who came back and who did unfortunately experience a number of injuries because of an IED, one of the things when he was first driving a car on the highway and saw garbage over to the side, he yanked his wheel and swerved because apparently the enemy overseas hides these IEDs in trash, as well as animals.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
So there's an adjustment to that. It's not like that here, but it takes time and it takes understanding from people. So a Florida Highway Patrol officer stopped him and said, "What are you doing? Are you drunk?" And he said, "No, absolutely not. I was thinking that was a bomb." And he said, "You're home. It's okay." And so luckily that particular trooper was very understanding and patient. And I think that's what people need to have more than anything.
Absolutely. Now, Michael, I would be doing a complete disservice if I did not get into Paws for Patriots and the fact that Brittany is the best guest I think I've ever had on a TV show.
She's quiet and pretty.
She doesn't hog the conversation.
No,
she listens intently.
Yeah.
She is phenomenal. And so tell me a little bit about what you're doing with Southeastern and Paws for Patriots.
I'll tell you, I was wounded, like I said, in August of '04. It was a couple of months later, one of the board members from Southeastern Guide Dogs actually contacted my mom and said, we've got this guide dog school in Palmetto and we want to help your son if and when he's ready. And I started thinking, okay, that's a great idea. I like dogs. Who doesn't, right? I came down to campus, I got to meet with some of the puppies, play with the little puppies, and that conversation with Bobby continued, and it grew into this idea of helping more veterans than just one local hometown hero. And it grew into this idea for Paws for Patriots. And in January of 2006, Bobby and I launched the Paws for Patriots program here at Southeastern Guide Dogs. It originally started just as a program to help blinded or visually impaired veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan get guide dogs. And we saw a greater need. We opened it up to all veterans, whether they served in combat or not, whether they lost their eyesight in combat or whether they lost it later in life, macular degeneration, who knows. We started doing facility therapy dogs at Walter Reed Army Hospital, and that's grown to multiple locations, including Camp Lejeune and Andrews Air Force Base. And we started recently with veteran service dogs for veterans with post-traumatic stress. I will tell you my experiences with Brittany. I've had Brittany since March of 2007. She's a guide dog, essentially is what she was trained to do. She gets me from point A to point B very safely. I've gained my independence and freedom back, right? Above and beyond being a guide dog, Brittany is my companion. She's my buddy. She's my crutch even at times. She stepped in and helped me with my confidence, getting back out there into the world. I went back to college. I couldn't have done that without Brittany by my side. She not only helped me get to class, but she helped me cope with class. She helped me do my homework when I was getting stressed. Brittany would be there right next to me, and she'd put her head on my foot, or she'd interrupt me while I was trying to write a paper just so I'd take a break. Helped me keep my sanity, help me with those stress and anxiety issues that I've dealt with coming home. And I think that the veteran service dogs take that to a completely different level. They help some of the more severe cases of post-traumatic stress, guys that are not willing to leave their home, not willing to interact with their family, things like that. These dogs get them out of their shell and give them a battle buddy. In the Marine Corps, when you're overseas, you don't leave the base without a libo buddy, a liberty buddy, right? So when you go out, when we were stationed in Japan, we weren't allowed to just leave on our own. We had to have a friend with us. There's safety in numbers, right? So if you're going to do something wrong, that guy can police you, things like that. But the dog is the same thing. You now have your battle buddy, your liberty buddy with you when you go out, who's specially trained to help mitigate these symptoms of post-traumatic stress, to help create that personal bubble between you and a person that might be getting too close to you, to help notify you if somebody's coming up from behind you, not necessarily in a threatening manner, but just so you know, so you don't get spooked, to become that grounding element when you can hug the dog as you feel an anxiety attack coming on, and you can refocus on that physical object, i.e. the dog, and then the stress of the outside world starts to fade away, and then you can refocus on your task and keep going forward. This program has helped Paws for Patriots, over 100 veterans directly, and through our facility therapy dogs, we've touched the lives of thousands of veterans. And to be a part of that, to help start that program, has been very fulfilling for me. I'm able to give back to my community of blinded veterans, of veterans dealing with post-traumatic stress, veterans living with post-traumatic stress. It's been very rewarding.
Melissa, I know Manatee Glens does not have a dog therapy program per se yet. If I have my way, we will someday. What do you say about canines and how they can help somebody going through any kind of anxiety, depression, trauma?
I actually know 2 other veterans who have dogs as well, specially trained. For those veterans, it's really to help them with the depression and anxiety that come along with the post-traumatic stress. I think it's a fantastic thing. Canines have a sort of a sixth sense. So, like Michael said earlier, sometimes Brittany knows him better than he knows himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they can alert them to things, or actually intervene by touching their owner or their partner before things get out of hand or out of control. I think it's a fantastic program, and I'm so happy that it exists for the people that can benefit from it.
Thank you.
I think they're a great social icebreaker too.
Yes.
Everybody loves them.
Everybody will go up, and it's a great way to meet people. So it breaks down some barriers.
When I was at USF, I was that blind guy with Brittany.
Yeah.
Everybody knew Brittany,
They did.
and I was just that guy that she drug along everywhere. I was the fat guy that she drug everywhere. You know.
Well, you're a tall, big guy, so you're a little imposing. So you see Brittany and think, oh, I'll go up and meet Brittany. So this is terrific. We could talk for hours about the great positive programs, and there really is hope. And that's what I want people to leave with is, yes, post-traumatic stress is a problem. It's an issue, but there's hope and there's help out there. And encourage people to do what, Melissa? If they know someone or they themselves feel like they might be suffering and feel like they're alone,
Get help, because it does work. Michael's proof of that. I have a number of friends that are proof of that. It's not hopeless. Right now we're losing one veteran every 80 minutes to suicide, which is really unacceptable and completely preventable if we can be patient and supportive, have the services available when they need it, when they're ready, and really reaching out to them.
And Michael, one last word from you. What would you want the people to know about post-traumatic stress and what's available there?
Not all of us suffer. There are varying degrees of post-traumatic stress. I'm highly functional. I've got friends that will never again probably function in a civilian life. What I'd like the public to know is we're not evil monsters. We're not bad people. We just are going through some trying times because of our experiences. And if you do know somebody that is struggling with post-traumatic stress, help them out, especially if they're a veteran. Walk them into a VA hospital, walk them into a vet center, and encourage them to get help. Don't browbeat them. Don't tell them that there's a problem with them. Just let them know, I'm here to support you when you're ready for the assistance.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I want to thank both of you. Melissa Larkin Skinner, who is Vice President of Inpatient Services at Manatee Glens, Michael Jernigan, retired U.S. Marine Corps, Brittany, the guide dog, and I want to especially...
The most amazing
Yes,
Brittany.
The most amazing Brittany. She's gorgeous. And I want to thank the staff and the people at Southeastern Guide Dogs for welcoming us to this beautiful campus today, and we appreciate you, our audience, and of course, METV, where you can learn something new every day.